Okay, I just want to check that this is actually running. Yeah. Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us. Today we're just doing a front-end Ask Me Anything, but you can ask about UX things, UI, anything you like. Myself and Schalk, I'm sure if you've joined before, you know who we are. If you haven't, we are co-organizers, founders of FEDSA. And yeah, we just want to quickly just say thanks to our two sponsors who allow us to bring you these events. That's IO, a software company in Cape Town, and NML, also a software company in Cape Town. And they have been supporting us for a long time. So thanks to them. Disclaimer, I work at NML. Disclaimer out of the way.
Yeah.
Okay, so today, nice. So today we're just going to be running an AMA. So any questions, anything you'd like to ask us, and we'll do our best to answer them. You can just pop them in the comments on YouTube side. They come through to the studio, and we'll put them up on the screen. We did get one question in our Discord from Mandisa, who I hope has managed to join us. So, Schalk, shall we kick off with that one?
Yeah, I think that is
it's a really great
yeah, it's
question.
a really great one. Great question, maybe not as great of an answer, but yeah, let's dive into it. So, yeah, so I'll read it out loud, and then we can take it from there. So, basically, she said, okay, so it's a two-part question. So basically, she says she's deviating from kind of the initial kind of path that she set for herself in terms of becoming like a front-end developer. And so it's just like skimming this. It seems like the crux of it is that she's actually finding that she's enjoying the UX part of it more than actually the coding part. So obviously, and she asks, like what. Okay, sorry, it's hard to read and talk at the same time, but okay, cool. So she just says, like, she kind of finds like some aspects of it fascinating. She's currently enrolled in the She Can Do mentorship program, and also shout out to She Can Do. They do amazing work, Kate and the team, and also the Google UX course. Yeah, the Google UX course is also a good one. Yeah, like I'm usually not a big advocate of like just doing online courses and stuff, but if you were to do one, the Google one is pretty decent. There are a lot of these courses that are just like quick money grab. The Google one, yeah, like, and I think there are ways to get it at a discount rate and whatever. Cool. So then the actual question is, how would you leverage your web skills that you already acquired, and how would you go about searching for a job with overlapping skill set? Would real mutual benefit. So okay, so it seems like she's asking about, cool, how do you leverage the dev skills you already have, and to what degree is it possible to get something where you kind of employ both skill sets? And things around like kind of what would those jobs look like, what can you expect in terms of entry level salary and so forth, and then just to follow up, other courses, resources, and so forth. Okay, so this is a really meaty question. Like, it's actually a great question. I think we can dive into this for quite a while. So I'm happy for you to give it an initial stab, Justin, and then I will weigh in.
Sure. So I think, look, I think we should start off by, there's Mandisa. Hi, Mandisa. Thanks for joining us. I hope we can answer your question in some way or form. Yeah, I think it's important, Schalk, that we acknowledge the state of the market right now, and that it's definitely in a downturn, and one of those cycles that comes around in tech, and we've experienced them before. So we are in that kind of phase at the moment where hiring hasn't, there's a lot of doom and gloom, but I also think it's exaggerated in a number of ways as well. There are still many positions available in UX and front-end fields and so on. But just to acknowledge that there has been a little bit of a drop-off. And yeah, I was gonna, yeah, there we
recommend
go.
this. This is great. This is a phenomenal read. I'd read it. Everyone read it. It's a great read. Jared Spool is amazing.
Yeah, very, very good article on just unpacking a little bit this current state of the market. What are the reasons for that? But also not taking a doom and gloom approach that everything's over,
Yes.
and we should be looking for other careers. That is not the case. Yeah, but I spent quite a lot of time on the Reddit for my sins UX sub, and it is just it's like World War III has happened in that thing. Every second post is just about how people are finding it hard to get work and so on. But that doesn't reflect the reality out there. That just reflects the disgruntled people who go on Reddit. So I think there's a lot of talk around all of this, but that article really is the most kind of sober and well reflected and reasoned one I've read on that in a while.
Yes, and what makes it great as well is that like he also gives some good recommendations, and like I like his takeaway. So he spends a bit of time going into kind of the history and how did we end up in this place, and it's mostly most of it is like political factors. A lot of it is just like tech was a bubble. And like I don't think we're ever going to be seeing the UX market that we saw the last 5 years. I think that was almost want to say a once in a lifetime event. I don't think it's ever going to reach those levels again. But so we need to also adjust our expectations. But the reality is that what he also states is there are more people employed in UX like every single year at the moment. But there are also more people unemployed in UX as well. So the amount of people in the field is just like ballooning, more so than, so the jobs are growing. It's just that the people that are looking to enter the field who entered the field 2 or 3 years ago or are finishing up their degrees now are just like the amount of people coming in is just way over the actual growth in terms of jobs that we're seeing. So there are jobs. It's just like we're no longer in a place where he has a joke in here where he says, what does he say?
He says,
I've joked that in a few years ago, all a UX professional needed to do was sit in a darkened room and whisper, "I can do UX," and in an instant, half a dozen recruiters would materialize and start bidding on who would get them into their first interview. And that was pretty much it.
My LinkedIn inbox from around that time can attest to the truth of that.
Yes. Yes. And it's interesting now. It's kind of flipped now. It's people messaging me on LinkedIn asking if I have any jobs for them. So it's interesting that it's interesting. He also talks about kind of I think he talks about like the upside down or the inverse or something, inversion. He calls this the great inversion, which is basically where we went from like kind of a specific like reality into it like just completely like flipping upside down, like the other way around. And sorry, and just to kind of, I think it's worth just like mentioning some things about this article because like it is a really great and comprehensive, especially in a time where there's so many bad takes. And I do like, and he also calls out a lot of those bad takes, which I also appreciate. So the one is AI. Like AI has nothing to do with this. Like he kind of mentions some factors and stuff. Like AI, the reason why there aren't any jobs is not because of AI. Yeah, and
that goes for development as well.
Exactly. Anyone who thinks that has a very shallow understanding of what the job actually entails. yeah, if AI could replace your job, like your job as a UX person, then I don't think you can even justify earning anything above like 20,000 or 10,000 a month. Like if I'm thinking about things AI can do that can be replaced, I can't imagine that you were earning a lot of money from the beginning, even because like a lot of that's just like busy work and not just like creating artifacts and stuff. But so
I'm
sorry,
I'm
go ahead.
popping this article in the Discord
Oh,
in the
thanks.
event,
Yes.
so
So
people can have a read.
yeah, so
Yeah,
he gives a lot of advice, and like I also like the fact that he paints this in terms of, if you understand that like the reality is not different, it's completely flipped. If you understand that, and you understand that the things that worked in the past is not going to work today, that can be a competitive advantage. Like your ability to
absolutely.
adjust to this new reality can be something that can put you ahead of others who are coming into this looking for jobs and doing all the same things that have been mentioned in articles from 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And I would also, once again, be cautious of. So I mentioned the Google UX course and whatever is it's one of the better ones. But I would also be cautious of kind of like training material, because a lot of that training material was geared for a reality that doesn't exist anymore. I think the type of work even that would be expected of someone in this role is different from what would be expected 5 years ago, just because the industry has changed so much. So that some of that is just like there's more expected of you now, just because the power dynamics have changed between employer and employee. But I also think the type of things that are getting created and hired for now is very different as well. I think 5-6 years ago, there was a lot of SaaS things being pushed out, a lot of startups and whatever, and all those things needed UX people. Because of the interest rate and kind of all of that, a lot of those type of projects have kind of dried up, and most of the work now at this point you would, interestingly enough, find kind of in the enterprise space and so forth,
Yeah,
um,
definitely.
or
Yeah,
enterprise adjacent, which is what I think Justin is kind of doing. Like you're not working in the corporate space, but you're kind of corporate adjacent. um, and this
essentially,
Yes,
yeah.
and the same for me as
Our
well.
clients
So
are large corporations, yeah,
yes,
not
so same
startups.
for me as
Yeah,
well. So the type of stuff I work on at the moment is also I don't do corporate or enterprise. I'm allergic to it. I can't do it. But I'm building and working on things that are getting resold to big companies. So either the two products that I work on, either there's some adjacencies in terms of Amazon and Takealot and whatever, and then the other is kind of more in line with like fashion retailers and something. So, you're going to have a hard time finding work for kind of like a blank scratch new project that starts out, blue sky. We need to draw wireframes. We need to,
and
do
yeah,
do a kind of a competitor analysis, all those things. I don't think there's a lot of that work at the moment, just because once again the interest rates and whatever has made it very hard it's much riskier now starting a new company or whatever. So,
yeah.
but I do also think what you can do is acknowledge that, and then try and hone the type of skills that someone, like if they're looking, the team at APSA or whatever is looking to expand their team, what are the type of skills that they would look for? It probably wouldn't be like wireframing or mock-ups or
No,
whatever. It would probably be looking at an existing thing, figuring out how to solve a very small scoped problem. So there's
mm,
a thing where if someone logs in but they haven't verified their email or whatever, or they have an older version of the app and whatever, and there's some weirdness there, and you need to tell them like, cool, sorry, like you need to do this, you need to reset your password or whatever. So much more like small scope, like how do you design that UX flow and whatever, as opposed to, cool, let's create an app, let's come up with an idea, let's build redesign Uber or whatever. So I think it's important to also just train yourself to work to kind of develop a skill set in terms of working in smaller scopes on existing things, solving problems, like small problems that kind of are part of like a big system. And you have to kind of make compromises in terms of what you can do, and there's this old code base and so forth. So I would be very cautious of building out your portfolio with building apps and stuff from scratch.
Yes, I completely agree.
Yes.
I
So
also
here's a
wouldn't
sorry. Go ahead, Justin. I've interrupted you now a couple of times.
No. You finish that thought, and then we'll pick it up again.
Yeah. No, because I'm actually not going to search for something. So
okay.
So
I would
someone
also
who
say,
yes, go ahead.
I would also say, in terms of, I think it's a good point to talk about building out your portfolio, because there's nothing stopping you from doing work where you just go and look at something and look at improving it so that you can put it in a portfolio, right? But as Schalk absolutely says, that putting together a massive like Behance 50 or 60 screens of an entire application, I don't think that's as you say, that's not the kind of things that we're going to be seeing for the next couple of years. It's going to be improving existing products and adding additional features to existing products rather than building anything from scratch. So I think an ideal thing would be to look at, for just in terms of building out case studies and things like that, look at something you use all the time and find a pain point with it, and look at, well, how can we improve this, and work on that as a case study that you can do. I do hiring when we are hiring, and I'm much more impressed with people who can show that they recognize a problem with something and how to solve it, than someone who puts together the same old app that I've seen a million times on Behance. So it's I think if you can show problem-solving skills rather than you can design the most beautiful app in Figma or whatever, that's everyone can learn a tool. And we're not particularly interested in how good you are with a tool. It's way more around what are your problem-solving skills.
And then go ahead.
And related to that, for Mandis's question, I think there's going to be when we had the big hiring frenzy for UX, people were being hired straight into UX positions out of like a 2-week boot camp in the States, and being paid like $150,000 a year, which is like 2 million rand. It was insane, right? And they would then go straight into these things and work on UX. But what work were they actually doing related to UX? And often your job was to like build wireframes. That is gone. We're never going to have that again. I feel that UX, and we're going to be hiring for people who are building and designing applications. It's going to be UI designers who know how to do UX on the level of user flows, figuring out information architecture, and so on. And then we're going to have researchers who are going to be doing on more of the ethnographic, psychological side, who are more involved in that kind of thing, and do a lot of research, a lot of testing, and so on. We're not going to have a UX professional who does wireframing as a job. It's over. And
so I also think yes, go ahead.
You need to distinguish in an early phase of your career, or if you're looking into something, what is the one that you are most interested in and feel that is going to be what you want to do. Rather than, I think that when that huge, like, let's hire everybody happened, thousands of people, probably hundreds of thousands across the world, suddenly transitioned into UX. And not because they were particularly passionate or interested in it, but because it was seen as like a career in tech that you can do. But we need to really, really stress that that's over. You need to pursue the thing that interests you the most, I think.
Yes. So, go ahead.
Go for it, Schalk. No, good. I'm done.
I'm also, like, so I think, like, also we're coming to the end of UX, and like you said some fighting words, Justin. So I'll kind of I'll equally split the hot takes between us. Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, because like it's tough talking about this. It's interesting as someone who has a foot both in development and in design. Like, I don't know,
Yeah.
like it feels like I often feel that engineers have more of an appetite for these hard conversations. I think if
Yes.
anything, engineers maybe kind of delve into some of these hard conversations a bit too eagerly. And then you kind of get stuff like Carl, what was it, like Matt? It is Matt Pocock like blocking Carl Simpson on LinkedIn and whatever, and like, because like people just like big names in UX just like openly, or in software just openly arguing on LinkedIn for everyone to see and whatever. But
Yeah.
so but I do think that this idea of UX as an independent role, I think, is coming to an end.
Yes, I
I
completely agree.
UX is 100% a thing, and UX is 100% something that's super important. But UX, having someone who kind of, what would be the word? Someone who's kind of the steward of that, I think, is coming to an end.
Yeah.
Do I think it's good to have someone who's the primary steward for user experience? I think it's an amazing thing, and it's sad that we don't have that anymore. But I think in terms of the realities of the job market, like that's definitely something that was a luxury. Having some person whose their role is they are the UX police, and they just ensure that UX happens and ensures that a certain standard gets kept up with, and kind of a certain standard is met and so forth. Yeah, I think from an organizational point of view, yeah, like it's unfortunate, but like it is what it is, and I'm saying these are fighting words, but um you're going to have a very hard time arguing with me that a company would rather like retrench a developer or a project manager um than like a UX person, um because UX is a bit more fuzzy,
Yeah.
and like the impact that you have is a bit more subtle. If you don't have a project manager, or if you don't have someone actually writing the code, that's a different story. um yeah, so I think it's like I think that the two pieces of advice that I can give. So we're actually not directly speaking to your question now, Mandisa, and I'm going to try and speak to it now directly, because we're having this big like soapboxing about UX. But I think it's important to just set the context for how we're answering your question. Okay, so but then like specific to your question, so you ask like, how can you leverage your dev skills? I would say that this is kind of where the previous thing I was talking about right now kind of leads into that. I think we are in a place in the industry, in the very for the very foreseeable future. I don't know what happens after that, but in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, where you are gonna have to leverage something. As I mentioned, I don't think you can just get by on being a UX specialist. You are
Agreed.
gonna have to like leverage something with that. Okay, and so I generally see like that playing out in three directions. Okay, so, and I think it's not because like what has changed is just that the demands are just higher now. Like it's pure like supply demand. Like there is just more of a supply than there's a demand, so people are just gonna try and get a better deal in terms of when they're hiring someone. So I think you are going to have to leverage something else along with it, which isn't not necessarily a bad thing though, because I do also feel that UX is something that you should be applied through a specific lens, and UX isn't like something that's a vague, like you are good, you specialize in UX, period. Okay, the UX of what? And so and to me, like, there's several lanes to consider UX. Okay, so the first one is kind of a more of a strategic domain level approach, where you are someone that's quite intimate with the domain, and kind of have a strategic, like, almost business analysis role that you play. So let's say, I see this starting to happen. It's like people that, so think about someone like Jax or whatever. Like, people are starting to kind of become leverage more their domain knowledge. So if you've done a lot of work in civil technology, so you've done a lot of work on like civil society stuff or government stuff or whatever, like, or you've maybe gotten a lot of experience in kind of like e-commerce or like retail or whatever, or you have more experience kind of in the banking sector, or fintech or so forth, and a good understanding of the domain in which the product exists, I think is really going to carry you like very far. So like, that is some way that you can kind of start specializing, is kind of like taking a focus area and like really getting a sense for the domain and how the realities of the domain get translated into user experience things. So what that means is, so previously, once again, you'd be like, okay, I'm going to design a banking app, and you'd be like, cool, like Gestalt principles and what are all the other stuff, like, I almost want to say micro interaction animations and the rule of 12 or whatever. You just think about the visuals very abstractly. I think now there would be an expectation that you have a certain understanding of the underlying domain. You understand something about, cool, when an EFT transfer happens, what is actually happening? What are the realities there? What is actually happening behind the scenes? And you make UX decisions based on that. I would probably say, Justin, you probably know a lot more about how financial institutions work than you would have liked to. Purely
Absolutely.
Exactly. And I found the same when I was working for National Treasury. Like, I know so much about just like how governments decide on their national budgets, and how far ahead they plan for that and whatever. And that's like, so, and and that is something that took a very long time to learn in order to make UX decisions based on that. And I think we were in a place where, because there was such a big demand, people said, okay, cool, you have a knack for UX, so we're keen to train, we're happy to train you in the domain. You come in here, you have some kind of aptitude for UX, we'll explain to you the underlying domain. How does the retail industry work or whatever. But once again, I think that time is past now. You're going to have a very hard time competing with someone who's doing UX work, but also has a super solid understanding of the domain, understands, like, how, if you're doing work for let's say Superbalist or whatever, like, what do buyers do? How do they decide what to sell? How do they what happens when someone adds it to their cart? When does it get shipped to them? Like, all of that should inform your actual decisions. So if anything, I think there's a ceiling to just UX in a vacuum. So I would, if I were you, Mandia, I would maybe figure out kind of like some, like, kind of really see if there's an opportunity. I wouldn't necessarily go and decide I want to get into medtech and then just learn everything about kind of how the medical systems work and whatever. But if you see an opportunity for you to really dive into a domain and make that your skill set, then like I think like really grab that. Okay.
Yeah.
That was one part
I
of
think,
the answer. Yeah, go ahead. Maybe you can kind of give a bit
yeah,
of an interlude before I give the second part, Justin.
no, just to
Yeah.
add on to that, I mean, and
Mm.
from my experience over the last, 10 years, 12 years, I've been
Mm.
working in financial services.
Mm.
You log into a web application because you want to put 1,000 rand in your retirement fund, and you go in and you fill in a form and it's done, right?
Mm.
But the complexity of what's actually happening behind that, really what seems like an incredibly simple transaction, is vast.
Yes.
And you need to understand so much about it in order to build that product. And I'm not talking
Yes.
just from a development point of view, from a strictly user experience and user interface experience on that. Because
how you
you're
model
living in a
that.
world, and how you model that, yes. So because you're living in a world where it's all these competing rules that are often rubbing hard against each other, yeah, where you as a UX person want to go, we need to make this as frictionless and easy as possible. But then you're butting your head against a set of really stringent rules that are regulated, that are set by government bodies, etc., etc., etc. So if you don't understand those, you can't deliver that product in a meaningful way. Yeah.
Yes.
So
yes. And I think yes.
Related to that is, and I think this also to Mandisa, in terms of experience as in working in development, is also really, really useful there. Because when you are doing a bit of UX work and you have to say, you have to display a complex form process. I'm just going to use my domain knowledge as an example for taking out an investment. That is all dependent on a whole bunch of APIs that you're getting. If you can get like a dump of JSON data that tells you these are all the fields, etc., and you can read that and you know what it means, it's you have such an advantage in understanding how those things work, because you know what the data looks like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're not just running off and going and designing a form in a wireframe, because that's useless to everybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think
and I
that
have an
point you're
anecdotal
making about domain is an absolutely crucial one.
And I have an anecdotal story about that, and so that was my second point that I wanted to get into. Okay, so there's this path that you can take deeper into the domain and kind of having a strategic understanding. So I would say that Justin probably has both. I would hope that I kind of have both of these as well. But we're pretty senior in our career already. If you're just looking at entering the market, you can't chase. There's that proverb, like my Afrikaans is coming out. There's this proverb that is like, if you chase two rabbits, you're not going to catch either. And so I would set my sights on one of these, and then later on you can decide, do you want to now start dipping your toe in the other one as well, or you start developing the other leg just by pure experience and doing stuff. But there's definitely two directions you can take, and the one is, like, as I mentioned, like becoming a domain expert. And I think, as Justin said, like, when you look at the actual UX work, it's very straightforward. It's like forms and inputs and submit and whatever. But like, what I often find, the work of UX is and this is I really like this idea. I think it's who is it? I think it's in Out of the Target. Juliet, I think it's a very old, like, computer science paper that effectively says that by definition, like, any work that can't be automated is going to be really, like, really, what would be the word? Going to be really tricky and complex. So if you like, so you want to be working in a space where there's like all this complexity and you do this, but then there's this other thing, and then you're going to get into legal trouble if you do this, and then the developers are telling you that, okay, but like also like the database, they're busy migrating it, and like they lost half the data, and and also this query takes like really long. We can't actually get this data for you without it crashing the app, and all that stuff. And I often find that people in design kind of get frustrated when they're like, oh, why can't I just build what I want to? But that's where you want to be, because if you don't have any constraints, that is where AI is going to take your job. Then you can use V0 or any of these tools to be like, build me a sign-in screen, because it's just going to build, it's going to look at sign-in screens out there, and it's going to build a perfect sign-in screen for you, devoid of all the realities of this. So but then the other part that I wanted to mention, so we spoke about domain. The other one is, and I think this would be the route that I would encourage you, Mandisa, is that like get familiar. Instead of getting more familiar with the domain, instead of like really becoming a domain expert, get really familiar with the materials that you're working with, the properties of the materials. So think about like an architect. So like an architect doesn't need to know how bricks are made, or how steel is made, or how glass is made, or whatever. But if he has a really good understanding of the properties of those things, if he understands the properties of bricks and how bricks are different from glass, and what are the problems with bricks, and like how is it more expensive to install wood here, or is it more expensive to put steel here, and what are some long-term problems if we do this thing composed to if we do the other thing, and this thing might look less visually nice, but it's going to be so easy to change this if we later like want to do something else. Whereas if we do the thing that looks really nice, like it might be a massive mission to actually change this and go back on our decision later on. And so even like, and I think like one thing that I often find also missing from discussions around UX and so forth is performance. How little information, like I find it amazing that how little talk there is in the UX market, like the UX world, about performance, how fast things load. How, if you click on something, how fast does it take for that thing? Do you sit there and look at a spinner? Like how, like what is more user experience than sitting and like what is more critical for your user experience than sitting and looking at lots of spinners? Instead, we're like, okay, but it needs to be blue because blue represents power and boldness and authority. It's like, what, like, dude, like none of that matters.
I shouldn't even see that.
Log in, and I'd sit there for 2 minutes, and then finally it logs in. Like, I find it amazing that like, and like that is left out of like discussions. And I think like part of that is just because like this is something that I found at UXSA very much, which is where I actually met Mandisa, is like, man, designers are scared of code. They are scared
extremely.
of even just HTML or whatever. Like they're so scared. And like, but like, I do think like familiarizing yourself with kind of like some basic concepts around HTML and inputs, and just even the form model, like post, get, all that stuff, Ajax, caching, like how do you make decisions around performance? How do you decide, like, let's say you click this thing and it takes 10 minutes to load, and you're like, okay, cool, I want this to be instant. But the only way to be able to make trade-offs in terms of performance is to understand the implications. So I think that is just going to give you such a big, like, competitive advantage if you have a good understanding of the material. As per my analogy again, if you're an oil painter, you don't need to understand how oil paint gets made. You don't need to be able to run your own oil paint like factory or whatever. And in the same vein, like if you want to dive a bit into the engineering side, you don't need to understand logic gates and binary and hardware and the TCP and IP protocols and and C level and memory management and that stuff. You don't need to, like, there's a level where like that's not really helping you, but there's you're going to get a lot of really like good low hanging fruit return on investments by just spending some time in the very basic like level of things. And it's such a pity to me because, and you can probably already attest to this, Mandisa, is like, even just from what you know right now, you can probably make much better design decisions. And like all the designers that I've found that have gone down this path have said like it's made them such a better designer. I have an anecdotal story. Christine Moore, who actually, she did a talk. I don't know if you remember, Justin. She and her team did a talk. They're from Kurtosis on design systems. And so she, at one point in her career, kind of felt that she was, kind of looking at getting more into development because she felt like there wasn't that many great opportunities in design and so forth. And so she took a year, and Christine, if you're watching this, correct me if I'm wrong, but so she took a year where she kind of went like, okay, I'm going to become a developer. And interestingly enough, it's the same for Chris, Mike Murray's wife, as well. She was a designer at APSA for a while now as well. She did the exact same thing where she was like, I'm going to pivot into development. But what ends up happening is once you get somewhat into that, you actually start seeing how a lot of the stuff you're learning about developing actually informs your design decisions. And you actually end up seeing that, hey, if I go back to design now with what I've learned, like I've already like super boosted my design career now. Like the design decisions that I can make, if I just go back to design now, I'm already 3 years ahead in my career, as opposed to if I just were to continue down this path of just becoming a programmer or whatever. And the same happened with her as well. So if anything, like my mission in life is just to get designers to not be scared of code and just try it. Try something basic. Sign up for Free Code Camp. Do Flexbox Froggy. Do something. I can promise you, your ideas of what coding entails is way overblown from watching Hollywood movies and stuff. A lot of it is just like working in Excel or whatever. And like the level when you're talking about HTML and whatever, there are levels. That was a lot. But this is obviously something that I'm very passionate about. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Justin, I don't know if you want to add on to that.
No, I think we've covered pretty much everything I want to say. Absolutely agree with you around how understanding the medium makes such a big difference to the work you can do as a designer. And as you say, it's not like you need to become someone who can also be a developer.
Yes.
It's understanding building blocks.
Yes.
Like I always love, use a form as an example, and it's the perfect one. If you understand how forms work, you're designing them way, way better than someone who doesn't. And
read
it makes a huge difference.
Read Adam Silver's Form Design Patterns. It's an amazing.
Yes, I'll find the link and pop it in the Discord.
Yes. Sorry, unless anyone else asks a question, you guys are doing this.
Yes, we've got a question from Fabian.
Yes. Really? Where?
I'm just going to pop it in our comments here, and then
in Discord or where?
It's in Discord. What do you look for specifically on a LinkedIn profile? Do you check job experience, involvement in communities, etc.?
Can you share your screen
Okay,
so I can just
honestly,
see it as well?
yeah, I'm just gonna pop it on the screen here so we can see it.
Okay.
There we go.
I'll let you take this one.
Okay. Look, I'm going to be frank. I don't really look at LinkedIn at all. When I'm hiring a designer, I ask for literally a one-page CV and examples of work. When I'm looking for designers, developers, I'm not going to go and see how many commits you made on GitHub in a year or anything like that. It is nice to see some work that you may have done that you might have on GitHub, but your commit graph or whatever is irrelevant, because my commit graph on GitHub is like nothing, but I'm doing pull requests like every day of my life. It's just in a different. It's not on GitHub. Yeah. So,
yeah, but to be fair, you're also like employed and behind NDAs. So
well, exactly.
yes.
But yeah, I guess if you are new,
you were just starting out. Now it's a different story.
You're just starting out. It is very helpful to have something like that. Yeah. But for me, the most important thing when I'm looking at hiring a developer, because we are talking about front end now, I think.
I think it applies for both, but yeah.
Yeah. Interview is the most important thing to me, honestly. Yeah. You can, if you're going through an interview process that is well structured, and then I don't really need anything more than that to make a decision about whether to continue with the process. Yeah. Obviously, I want to know that you know your way around certain technologies and so on that we are hiring for and require. But this is my process. Yeah.
Yes, I just wanted to highlight that. So
Yeah.
my chances are, if you're going to speak to someone else, you're going to get a wildly different answer, and the reason for that is the job market is currently broken. Like no one knows. No one knows how to. As someone who's doing a lot of hiring as well, no one knows how to, because like everyone is just drowning in applications. So like people that are doing hiring are figuring out like, how the hell do I find someone without spending 3 weeks full time on this? So
because you get literally hundreds of applications for
I had a job position that I advertised on LinkedIn, not even as an official job position, but literally just like a LinkedIn status where it's like, oh, by the way, I have a client who's looking to expand their team. Maybe reach out to them if you're interested. I'm not hiring on their behalf, but I'll just share this with my network. And I got, within the first week, I got 500 applicants. So so basically, let's say you theoretically spend 5 minutes with like looking at every person that applies. Let's even 2 minutes. Let's do 2 minutes. That's 1,000. That's 1,000 minutes. How many hours is that? You want to do the math? I don't know. Let me quickly do the math. 1,000 minutes divided by 60 is 16 hours. 17 hours.
That's 2 full days.
It's 16, 17 hours just to decide who you are going to interview. If they spend 2 minutes, 2 minutes on every candidate. So everyone's trying to figure this out.
Yeah. And then you might find 5 people you want to interview after that process, and that's another hour at least. And then you might want them to do some kind of an exercise, and that's another 2 hours, etc., etc. Hiring is super expensive for a company.
Well, if they do it right.
If they do it right, yes.
It's super expensive. Just whether the question is always just, is it expensive at the beginning or is it expensive later on? You decide.
Yeah.
You can do it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I've also been in companies where they were like, no, this hiring thing is taking too long. This guy looks good. Let's take him. And then it's like, 3 months of code base refactoring later.
Yeah. So if you do it properly, it's going to cost you a lot of money. If you do it poorly, it's going to cost you even more money just further down the line. So yeah. All right. Something that's important to me, what Schalk is saying about, putting out a job and then you get hundreds of applications. People are not spending a lot of time looking at your application. So your initial point of contact needs to make people want to read your CV, check your LinkedIn.
Let me ask you this, Justin. Do you open PDFs if they send it?
No.
Yeah. I haven't downloaded a single, since maybe the last 4 or 5 years of hiring, I haven't downloaded a single PDF. If you're applying for a job position, don't send me a PDF. I'm not going to open it.
No.
So, but it's interesting. Okay, so yeah, so don't send me a cover letter. Don't give me more stuff to read.
Don't send me attachments. I don't have time.
Like I'm not going to open
attachments. Go through them.
Yes,
send me a proper email. Yeah.
And so, and I also think in this, we're not 100% answering your question 100%, Fabian, but I'll get to that now in a second. But it's also, I think one thing to acknowledge is, because AI is so rampant, the way you actually stand out is just being like, hey, I saw the position. I think I might be a good fit. I've done this before and I've worked at this company. Maybe links. if you want to check out more, you can look at my GitHub here and there. Let me know if you want to chat or whatever. Those are the ones that really stand. The ones that are dear sir, madam. You know how many I got? That's dear sir, madam. Why I am excited to work at Schalk Venter. I'm like, dude, Schalk Venter's my name, not the company. They're just feeding it into an LLM.
So many things.
They're literally just taking the job thing. Yeah.
Do not use AI to write your letter, your email, because we know straight away, because we've got 6 emails that day that are identical. Where just the name has been changed.
And AI is really good at creating. AI is really good at creating words, and the more words you have, the worse. Send me an email with as little words as possible, as high signal to noise as possible. And so
then also, also don't just send an email with no words and a PDF attached. Do you know how often I get that? I'm like, what is this for?
Links. I find links. So and I have some follow-up questions for you because I'm genuinely curious, Justin, because I don't know how you do hiring. I mean, we don't really talk about it. I think this is the first time we're actually talking about this. It's interesting because I pay a lot of. There's 3 things that I kind of really, if I see them, I'm going to click on them. Is like GitHub, LinkedIn, and Behance. LinkedIn. The main thing I'm actually interested in is prior experience. It sucks, and I wish it wasn't that way. But once again, when it's going to take you 17 hours to just find someone, and you still have actual work to do, the company is saying you stop working for 3 weeks and hire someone now. I click on LinkedIn, and immediately, unfortunately, I filter out everyone who has no experience in either the domain or in coding or design. And there's nothing you can do about that. That's not. I don't know how to solve that problem. If you don't have experience in the field, you are gonna have a harder time going up against someone who has worked 3 or 4 jobs in this field already. The other thing is GitHub. If you include a GitHub link, and granted, I think there's also different rules if you're hiring a junior position or a senior position.
Yes,
the recent one I was hiring for is a junior position. So then, things like GitHub and so forth is more important because, you assume this person hasn't really worked on big projects before. They probably have a lot of just their own stuff that they're building, their portfolio and whatever, which is also what I assume, Fabian, kind of is where you are at from just previous discussions we've had. I would look at GitHub and I would just look at activity on GitHub. And sure, you can go and just commit some random nonsense every single day, but that already shows a level of investment. If you've been every single day going and just updating a README file for the last year, this probably already shows a lot more commitment than probably a 60% of the people that apply for the job.
Quite
Like
true.
I see
Quite true.
people. I see people apply for a job and they did their first Hello World on GitHub like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
You know, or
Mm.
I can see like they did some random commits and they still don't really even know how to use Git. Yeah. So, but I don't know. I don't know what other people use. Beyonce I use just because I think at the very least, I think what's more important to me, like on things like Beyonce and GitHub and so forth, is I think it's more useful for me to see kind of how far back it goes. So if you send me a
Mm.
Beyonce link and I see, okay, cool, you like if I go like you have some projects going back all the way to like 3, 4, 5 years ago, to me that's a
Yeah.
really good
And
sign. Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, that is absolutely a big thing for me with design is is being able to see progression as well. So
Mm.
if I can go back
Yes.
2 years and see, oh, you've done this work, and then I can look at the latest one and see, oh, well, there's a progression in your work. You've
Mm.
um,
Yeah. So
that you're not just
yeah.
doing the same thing over and over and over again. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Um,
unfortunately, the bad news is that like it is a long road now. I think the days
yeah.
of like
But
a quick boot camp and whatever is over. So you have to strap in for a long road.
I think
Yeah.
so. You have to treat looking for a position as like a full-time thing. Yeah. It's
Mm,
not, it's like, it's really unfortunate. And,
mm,
but it's the reality right now is
mm,
you're,
mm,
you're looking for a job becomes your job. Yeah.
mm.
Um,
And I also
yeah.
think like this is so trite, but networking. Um,
Yes. So yeah,
because
I
yes.
wanted to mention that as well. Yeah.
Mm,
Mm.
mm. So because
Most of the
honestly,
people, most of the
so,
people that
sorry,
I hire
I
are
keep on
referrals.
talking over you. Go ahead, Justin.
Sorry.
Yeah.
One, most of the people I hire are referrals.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
The last 3 people I hired, um, were like 2 of them I met at meetups.
Yeah.
Um, like so one of them is just like someone who I've just been having conversations with like online about random shit and so forth on
Yeah.
LinkedIn or whatever. Um, like and honestly, like if I were to advertise a position now and Mandisa and Fabian, you applied, I would probably like just immediately do an interview with you.
Me too.
Yeah, I'd probably just be like, cool,
You've,
let's just chat. Let's see where you
yeah.
are, whatever. Yeah, so I think that's very important is
Yeah.
just building relationships.
Yeah.
Because like the thing is, if I can save myself having to go through 500 PDFs and emails by just being like, okay, cool, I know a little bit about Fabian, I know a little bit about Mandy, so we've interacted a little bit. They seem decent. They seem like they kind of had, and I think just actually showing up for these type of things already is a bit self-selecting, insofar that you take your craft quite serious, and you're not just being like I can make some quick money like in software. You're like I actually
Yeah.
take this seriously, and I actually want to get good at this. I mean, the fact that you are
Mm.
showing up for meetups and stuff after hours, there's no um, reason for you to do that apart from just caring. The other thing is as well is if you do go to events and stuff, don't go with the angle of trying to find a job. I think that can be
Mm.
very off-putting. And also the other thing is as well is don't underestimate the value of peers. And people who are at the same level that you are at and who are actually in the same process that you are in terms of looking for a job or whatever. So many times I hire a junior or whatever, and we're still generally like when you expand the team, you're maybe looking for 1, 2, 3, 4 people. And we hire one person and we're like, cool, we're probably looking for 2 more. And they're like, hey, I have this guy who's also, kind of like like kind of trying to get into the job market and really cool guy. Do you maybe want to chat with him or whatever? Or I met this guy at a meetup who's like, he seems really cool or whatever. And a lot of times, like you actually get referrals from your peers who land jobs. So don't discount
Yes.
that. I've
Yeah.
had yeah. Yeah, I've had people like where I hired, like so Zishan and Mish, so they were kind of just doing like their own study group thing, trying to become developers. And so we hired Zishan back at Open Up, and he's like, um, yeah, okay, there's this guy who we were kind of like doing like accountability buddies or whatever, trying to become developers, and I'm gonna have to tell him like I got a job now and like we can't continue that. And I was like, no, let the guy come for an interview. Because also like what's really cool about that, there's already an established relationship as well. You know those
Yeah.
two guys can work well together. If you have juniors and you're like they already can work well together, that's cool. That's like a 2-in-1 combo deal. So don't discount networking with your peers. Don't just be like, I'm gonna go to events and I'm gonna like harass Skulk. I'm gonna harass Justin. Hey, you got any jobs? You got any jobs? You know. So yeah, but I
Yeah.
think like I'm preaching to the choir here. You know, the people that show up here are the people that are I have a lot of faith in terms of actually breaking into the market. Yeah.
I absolutely agree. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Scott,
Mm.
your thoughts on having your own website? Do you think it's gives you any kind of advantage, or is it again something that you don't really put much stock in?
I probably only got my first website when I left Open Up for the first time. Then that's the first time I ever got my own
Yeah,
website, and I was like I was
it's
head of front end at Open Up. So like I only
well,
got my own website.
my website
Yeah.
said coming soon for about 7 years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
So
mean,
when
I
I
think
had my own website, I already led a front end development team. So no,
so.
I don't. I so with the caveat that oh cool, I see Sean is here. Hi Sean, Tafik as well. Nice, cool. Hey guys,
Yeah,
I'd actually be curious. I know Tafik, you actually got a job if I'm not mistaken or an internship. I'd be curious how that worked out. Sean, I'd also be curious whether you got a job as well. So, like, these are also two people that I kind of mentored independently. So I'd be curious, like whether you guys got jobs. So, sorry, what was I about to say? No, completely.
websites, are they
Oh,
valuable?
I think the only and here's Oliver as well. Oliver is my junior. Oh, geez. Oh, okay. Now everyone's piling in. And you're an hour late, everyone. So I was just messaging people like, "Hey, it's a bit quiet in here. Like, come on." No, I'm kidding. I don't know why everyone showed up now. So the focus website. The only exception I would say probably don't do it. Just like use the existing stuff. Like honest the only exception being if you want to make your personal website a project. Um just send me a link to stuff. Have a bullet list link in your email of 3 things you worked on. Like I actually prefer that over going to, hi, this is my site. And then I click on something and it's like a spinner and it loads or whatever. It's like, unless you want to make that an actual project that you're like, cool, this is a thing I built and I want to
Yes,
showcase this. But don't build a website if you're not confident in your ability to build a nice website. Rather build
absolutely,
something cool.
absolutely agree.
Because also, like a portfolio website has very limited stuff to work with in terms of to really show your
It does.
skills.
It
So
does. I
you
mean,
might be yeah
my case studies, my work section on my website is here's a link to my company because I can't. It's all
yes
under NDA. I can't include any of it on my
yes.
own site.
So
Yeah. So
rather send me a bullet list of 3 things that you built. And
yeah,
if one of them is your own personal website, so be it. But like, it might be more enjoyable. It might also be more fertile ground to show your skills if you're building something like I don't know, an online calculator or whatever, instead of
yeah.
just
Or
a
your
random static site with
yeah,
like, especially if you're an
your
interaction designer. Like
exactly. Yeah.
there's not really anything like it's like doing any type of UX for a personal website so overkill. Like you're not going to show me anything. And like I can, I like all that I can
Not
see
a,
is how familiar are you with personal website patterns, design patterns.
yeah.
No, that's all.
Yeah.
Rather build
It's
something that's
wasted.
interactive. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Rather build something that's
wasted
interactive. Yeah.
work. Yeah,
Yeah.
wasted work.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
cool. All right.
completely
I
agree.
see. I see. Sean says he's got a job now already for 4 years. Nice, guys. Well done. Yeah, I know Sean also had a bit of a rough journey, eventually getting there. But yeah, just shows, like if you just, it's also just a numbers game. You just need to stick with it, and eventually, like if you can stick with it long enough, like the numbers will. Yeah, and that as well. Interview.
There we go.
Let's talk about this, Justin. Um, I have very
Interviews.
strong, yes, I have very strong feelings on this. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. How do you get better at interviews? Let's say I just decided I want to become a designer now.
Hmm.
How do I get better at doing like interviews?
Okay, so yeah, this is it's a tricky one because it depends on the process that an organization is going to follow. I've seen some crazy interview processes for UX designers where
Yes.
they last an entire day and you have to
Yeah,
whiteboard a
those are red
problem. And
flags for me
if
generally.
anyone's asking you to do that, you don't want to work there.
Imagine how they're going to treat you when you're on their
Imagine
payroll.
how they treat you when you actually are, when they're actually paying you. If they treat you like
When you're
that,
contractually obliged to do work for them.
yeah, exactly. So that's a massive red flag. Watch out for that. Yeah. Also, watch out for the so-called culture fit interview, because that's often how do I put this delicately?
People like me and Justin have a very good time. Have a like when we're applying for culture fit, like we're going in easy mode. Yeah, if we're onto the
That's an
same thing, yeah.
excellent way of putting it.
It's
Yes.
easy mode for us. Yeah,
Just
so yeah.
for historical reasons. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
if you're getting called into these culture fit interviews and there's like 5 people there, and that's what it's called, again, be wary of that. Yeah. I won't say more. Yeah. So I'll talk about our process, Scott, just for hiring a designer. So we have a 2-part process. The first interview is just an introduction to me and to our general manager. Yeah, and it's literally hey, let's get to know you. It's extremely casual. There's some little generalized questions around your experience. And just generally getting to know you in a pretty, I mean, obviously in the amount of time, it's quite a superficial thing, but we firmly believe that, and this is going to sound really fluffy, but anyway, we firmly believe that you're also interviewing us, do you actually want to work for this company? So that's the whole purpose of that first one. And then we go into a second one, which is just with me. And that's a portfolio kind of evaluation around previous design work. And it's usually people talking through work that they've done. Yeah. And I ask them to send me examples beforehand, and then I have questions around why did you make this decision and so on. It's just something like that. But they're all slightly different based on the kind of work someone's sending in. There isn't a like this is how the interview is structured. Yeah. So that's the process. Yeah. Again, having your own website, as we say, doesn't really factor into it as long as you can show evidence of work. It could be in.
So I would be. Let me put it this way: if you're building your own website, I'd be way more curious about the process of building the website than the website itself. I would much rather if you send me like a blog that you wrote about kind of the problems that you ran into and the decisions that you made, and you tried this, but then it didn't work out. Like I read that Josh Camo thing, and like I've probably reread it 3 times. That's how you pronounce his surname, no?
Camo, yeah, he's French Canadian.
Josh C, Mr. C-Man. But he wrote a blog about like, and it's a fascinating read. Just being like, cool, really, I tried really this, good. But then I wanted code highlighting in my examples, and like that. I would be super interested in that. yeah, like I don't want to put people on the spot, but I've also given advice in terms of when it comes to Beyond's portfolios and stuff. And I'll maybe show one a bit later. I'll maybe do Dean. Sorry, Dean, if you're here. I think like there's some really good examples in terms of kind of talking about. So what I often see is people are like, here's wireframes, here's mock-ups, here's the final thing. I'm like, you literally just showed me how to do the design process. I know nothing
Yeah.
about the decisions you made. Like, I just
Yeah.
saw you did wireframes. I saw you did mock-ups. I saw you did user personas. But how did you like? So like, it's really nice. Don't underestimate prose, like actually
Yes.
writing. And I'm saying this as you know. I just said, you don't want to read, but you don't want to read initially when there's like 5,000 people applying. But like, when you're a bit more in depth, like those things are useful. But I also think like, even if you don't, like the person who's interviewing you is not going to read it, putting down those words and writing that out for yourself, when you then have to talk about it, you already have all the puzzle pieces and you know how to talk about it and to tell the story about it. It's very common for people to ask, okay, what was the last thing that you worked on? Tell me a bit about kind of like how that went. Like, what were some challenges? And, yeah, so there's that. And I do think like, so another question I'm curious about, Justin, on your side is, do you kind of do like a split between technical interviews and like kind of regular interviews? I don't know. Is that like, do you make that dichotomy?
Sort of, yeah.
Is it?
The first interview there's quite a lot of non-technical stuff in that, which is a lot of explaining the role, what it's about, what is expected of you, etc. And then the opportunity to also interrogate that of us, as in, what's the day-to-day job, what are our policies around work from home or whatever it might be. But there will also be some role-related technical questions in that interview. Yeah. And then there's a proper just me and the person.
Do you do like some type of test or assignment?
It depends.
Or is it?
It depends. Yeah.
Yeah, I can speak about my own, but like I don't really know whether I should, because I think mine is not the kind of the norm, and it's mostly in reaction to how it's usually done that I find really toxic and kind of like I really find the way into like the interview process more often happens in the industry to be very problematic. So I think my own approach is mostly a reaction to that. So by definition, mine is not the norm. But yeah, so what I generally do is I do initial chat where honestly I actually just see if you show up. Like you'd be surprised how many people like I would probably shortlist a couple of people. Some of them would just ghost you. Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of that is just literally like, cool. Hey, show up. Hey, who are you? Cool, man. Yeah. Like I'm also. Are you from Cape Town? Like whatever. Cool. Let's chat again later. Yeah.
That's exactly what our first interaction is like. Yeah.
Exactly. And do you do them online?
Yeah, everything's online. Nothing's no, never. We've got to make that's another thing. We're not going to make you travel to something and spend money that you don't have.
Yeah. I also very firmly believe but I'm also not sure whether I'm the exception here, but I'm not keen on take home work.
Me neither.
Really? Okay. I didn't know that. But I really feel, and when I do, then it's paid work. So sometimes we break out some type of task that's small in scope for someone to do, that's very low risk, and we give it to them as freelance work. Like we have a contract, like, okay, this is like 3-4 hours or whatever, and we'll pay you, and then if we like it, cool, we'll kind of continue, and then you've also done some of your probation already and whatever. But it's also a bit different because if you guys employ it, as an organization that employs, is very different than Schalk Venter or PTY Ltd or like me.
Yes.
Yes, or one of my clients
Yeah.
actually looking for
Yeah.
other contractors or whatever. But and then what I generally do is I just and I know people complain about like ChatGPT, but I think like it's a problem because like the way they do the interviews is so formalized that ChatGPT is going to be an amazing tool if your interview structure is that formalized and rigid. Because that's where
Yes.
ChatGPT excels. So what I usually just do is I'm like, cool, let's chat. Like, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Did you see this new? Scroll animation stuff was added to CSS? Yeah, man. Like, yeah, that's insane. Did you read this article? Oh, yeah. Like, what do you think about? Yeah, dude. Like this built-in light mode, dark mode thing. Oh my word. And yeah, and like. Yeah, like what is your we tend to kind of just use we used GraphQL at some point, and then like it became too much of a mission to kind of maintain that, and we just went back to like plain REST or whatever. Like, yeah, I don't know. What is your thoughts like on that? Like, I don't know. Have you kind of which one do you prefer, or like? And it's just like and you can super easy pick up.
Yes, you don't need to give someone a 3-day long test that they have to do.
You can very easily pick up. Like, I've had recently in the last kind of hiring like stints that I did, like it seems to be the make or break one used to be promises. When I started talking about JavaScript promises, that's when either someone kind of like prove themselves or they just like completely fell off the wayside.
Glazed over.
No, exactly. And it's like and then like this guy has no idea like what a promise is, like, or what asynchronous programming even is, and it's like, dude, like that is not. There's no way. Like I don't know how you're gonna handle an endpoint, an API call, if you don't even know what a promise is. Like, it's not the job for you.
Yeah. No, exactly. If you've got a good set of questions that you can do in a conversational way, that is for me the best way to do it. Yeah. And that what's also super important for me is does the person I'm interviewing care about this thing that they're working? Yeah. And I'm not saying that should be like a your job is your life and all that. I completely don't misread it.
Look at all the records behind Justin. Like, just that's Justin's life. The job is a side gig.
the job is to be able to buy those. Yeah. No,
he's just sorting them every weekend. Cataloging them.
Damn it, that is my plan for this weekend. No, but like those questions you mentioned about, hey, have you seen this new thing or whatever, like just an interest in what's happening goes a really long way. Yeah.
Yes. And it
also I always
helps.
ask people, how do do you have any interesting newsletters that you read?
Yeah, that's a great one. I haven't thought about that.
Things like that, and for designers, where do you look for design inspiration? What's good? Do you have any recommendations for good places to go when you're stuck and things like that?
100% dribble, nothing else, bro. Just dribble.
No. Dribble is not the right answer. Dribble. Sorry. We've got another question. Yeah, unless
I saw that one. That's a great one.
Yeah. So how do you balance getting locked into a framework versus? This is a great one. Yeah. Should I learn JavaScript or should I learn React? Basically,
the answer is a very unsatisfactory yes.
Yes, you should learn JavaScript. You should learn both. I completely agree.
Yeah, like I've
a lot of people disagree with this.
but people that disagree, what I found that people that disagree with that are people that haven't really worked with juniors.
Yeah.
Because I can promise you the biggest thing, the biggest danger in your career, in your journey to getting your first job, 100% is losing motivation. That's 99% of the time where people fall out or they drop out is they just I don't I'm burnt out. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not smart enough. Like I didn't think it was going to be this hard. Like this programming thing sucks. 99% of the time. Um, and and it's interesting that um, I've had conversations about this with Cable from he's from Changelog and JS Party because we
Mm.
had him on the mental health podcast as well, um, and like it's interesting because we spoke about this as well because he's actually a actual legit like basketball coach as well. So he does like coaching of basketball as well, and he drew a lot of analogies there in terms of it's a fine balance because you want to if you just let the kids just do what they want to do, then they're just going to want to shoot hoops all the time. And they don't want to do the hard stuff like dribbling and like kind of learning like those skills. Um, and I think there's a danger there where if you just do the fun stuff only, then you're just going to be using abstractions all the time. You're
Yeah.
just going to be
Mm.
pulling in like React Fiber and building some cool 3D stuff in React and pulling in Material
Yeah.
UI, never learning any CSS or
Hmm.
so. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, you also don't want to be in a position where this is a variable. This variable is when you assign a piece of data into memory. This is a function. Um, and I often equate that with kind of the way I think it's also been very enlightening for me. So okay, let me just give the quick answer and then let me expand a bit further, just in case it wasn't clear. So the quick answer is do learn what you enjoy. Period. Time you spent in the seat writing code, whatever gets you to do that is going to be the thing that's going to actually be the primary differentiator between you and someone who just doesn't make it. Okay, you just need to write code, whether you're writing that code for Angular, you're writing it for whatever. Okay, because the only way to get better is to write code. But you should you should work your way back from the abstractions. You shouldn't start with the fundamentals, and a lot of people disagree with me, but I respectfully disagree with them as well. And I would probably say I've spent a decade of my life working with students and being and mentoring people and whatever. So I would probably say like this is a very informed decision, a very informed
Mm.
opinion. Start with the
Agreed.
abstractions. Do npm vite at latest React. Build a to-do app. Go on to medium.com. Find screw that. Get Cursor. Say Cursor, build me a to-do app that has a SQLite backend and offline syncing or whatever. Okay? Awesome. But I think the point is then people do that and they put it in their portfolio and they're like, yeah, on to the next thing. Start with the abstraction, then work your way back to the foundational things from there. Okay? Look at why would I use SQLite? What are the alternatives? What's the difference between SQLite and Mongo,
Mm.
Postgres? How would I do the same thing if I were to use Postgres? How would I do the same app if I were to build it in Vue? Actually, are there other ways that I'm submitting this form and I'm using, let's say, Formic or React Final Form or whatever? How would I write this myself? I'm actually using Zustand or Redux here. what if I get rid of that library and try and write my own kind of pub sub, like observer pattern store thing? Okay, so you start with these abstractions because it's really nice just having something that you can start, pulling apart and taking out libraries and stuff and trying to implement it yourself, than just being like, I'm going to have a function that says hello world. So I always encourage people, do something cool, just throw abstractions and then start removing those layers of abstraction and start building the parts yourself, replacing it with your own things. My students, we just start using Convex. I don't know if you've used Convex before, Justin.
I have.
Convex is as plug and play as you get.
It's amazing. Yeah, incredible.
It's you don't need to know anything about anything.
No.
Yes. Okay, and Sean also raises a good point that it's generally easier to learn popular technologies, and that's also my advice. Is
Absolutely,
a lot of people ask me, should I learn React? Should I learn Angular? Should I learn whatever? React, hands down. Do I think React's the best framework? Hell no. It wasn't up to me.
That's another conversation.
If it was up to me, all of you would be using Elm or Gleam. You'd probably be using Luster and Gleam, but everyone decided they want to use React and TypeScript, like literally the worst statically typed JavaScript language. I don't know why we couldn't have just gone with like Reason or something, but you guys decided, the industry, you decided this is what you want. You want to take the worst of all the options, the one that's you want to use the static typing language that looks like it's C# trying to pretend to be JavaScript, but
because it is C#.
No. So, but that's what the community decided. Hey, let's everyone do this one, literally the worst one. But that's what I'm gonna. That's
where we are. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say, I would say, if you. I would recommend anyone to learn Gleam or whatever, or Reason. Reasons, it's called Rescript now, because I think there are way better ways of doing static typing. So just as a quick tangent, why? Okay, let me explain why. I'm going to have to really restrain myself here. Why is Rescript way better than TypeScript? Because TypeScript is trying to be a superset of JavaScript. What that means is that TypeScript, all JavaScript is valid TypeScript, and TypeScript just extends JavaScript. Okay? Mm-hmm. What's the problem there? JavaScript is the worst language in existence. If you're going to try and extend the worst language in existence, you're just going to get the worst statically typed version of that language. So what Reason of the Rescript and so forth does is it says, okay, let's actually just take the good parts of JavaScript, okay, and let's change keep that the same, and change the parts that are bad. So, for example, in Rescript, you can't do interpolation with a plus sign. So you can't concatenate with a plus sign. If you want to take two strings and combine them, you have to use two pluses. So they just added their own operator. You can only use pluses, regular plus on numbers. Okay, because they were like, this is insane. This should have never been in JavaScript. Okay, so they don't try and be 100%. They're like, the parts that are insane. But because TypeScript keeps all those insane stuff, you can only get so far. You can only polish all of that so much. Okay, rant over. Okay, but my point being, I write TypeScript every day of my life. Everyone that I'm mentoring, all my students, everyone do TypeScript. Just because it's, at the end of the day, we want to get paid money to write code, and we want to have access to job opportunities. And so, you go with what's popular. I don't know why you would intentionally, regardless whether you think I don't want to piss people off, so I'm going to say Justin JS, Justin Slack JS, okay. Let's say JS is your favorite framework, but
how did you know I was working on a framework?
JS, huh? JS. Yeah, I think I've
One
been
star.
laboring
Two
this
star.
point, but it's something that I find like that I see people sabotaging themselves because they like React sucks, and my friend's uncle's son's father said that no, you shouldn't spend your time on this React nonsense. You should actually be learning um, I don't
Laser.
know, Blazor or Riot JS or Solid or Svelte.
Solid.
Yeah,
Or
like
Svelte.
Svelte is amazing.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, especially the
Well,
new stuff with Svelte.
way
But
nicer than
dude,
React.
like
But
you're gonna have a very hard time finding a job as a Svelte developer. The only
yeah.
Svelte developers that I know are just, I'm gonna make people mad now, but are people who are already really strong JavaScript developers. Um,
Yes.
and because of that, they get to dictate the tech stack. So
Mm-hmm.
they are like, we're going to use Svelte. Like you're going to have a
Mm-hmm.
very hard time if you're looking to be a junior on a team where they're already using Svelte. If you learn React, you're going to have a much easier time. Okay, we did not answer the question. So the answer to my question is it doesn't matter, man. Like it's just try and get your butt in a seat and your hands on a keyboard as much as possible. That's all that matters. Whether that is like, I think trying to optimize that and being like, what is the best way that like I can spend that time is secondary. Whatever's going to
Mm-hmm.
get you, what do you enjoy? What's going to make you actually build your own projects? Um, and by nature, like if you just spend enough time with React, you're going to get better at JavaScript. Or if you spend enough time with Angular, you are going to get good at JavaScript or whatever because you have to, and
Yeah, because
you
they're just
yeah,
abstractions, and yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
and I mean
So sorry, go ahead.
you can just write plain old JavaScript in React. There's nothing stopping you. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Mm.
I another thing as well.
I mean, I'm not saying
Locking,
you should. I'm just saying
yes,
that people think of React as it's this other thing. It's not. It's just
yes.
JavaScript.
It's literally like it's literally just hooks and
Yeah.
JSX isn't even
Yep.
a React thing. Like lots of
No.
things use JSX. And also I
Yep.
think the other thing to note as well is getting locked into a framework is something that you do. You lock yourself into a framework. Like there's nothing inherent about a framework that requires you to lock yourself into it. You write your code in a manner. You can write your code in a manner that's somewhat abstract, somewhat agnostic of like the framework. Like how do you model your data? How do you
Yeah.
handle your HTTP requests? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so this is also why I'm very skeptical of a lot of the React server component stuff. I'll go out and say it. I think the server components are overhyped at the moment. They're cool, but I still think they're going to be the minority of React work. I think the majority of React work is still going to be single page apps. But it's because
Um,
like yes, go ahead.
no, no, no. I'm just saying we've got another question when you're done.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll finish this up. But okay, so like let me sorry guys, it's been a long week. And my mind is just like all over the place. I'll you can skip to the parts that's
Oh,
I'll put a transcript in. Sorry
yeah.
guys.
Don't
But
worry.
so okay, but my point being like I think like you lock yourself into things. There's nothing inherent that requires you to be. You lock yourself into certain paradigms. Like you lock yourself into OOP or functional programming or into like actually a specific database or whatever. Like locking yourself into things is a design decision. um the projects that I work on, like the fact that we're using React as a rendering engine is a footnote. It would basically be like probably a week's work to just swap it out completely for like Vue or whatever. And that's
Yeah.
because like we only model our rendering logic in React. Everything else is just agnostic of React. And so it's for you to decide how do you get, if you are just doing your fetch calls directly in your React rendering, yeah, sure, you're going to be locked in. If you're using use effect and straight up just calling in the component, going use effect straight up hitting the endpoint, sure, you're going to be locked in because you're putting all your logic in React. But there's ways to separate your concerns and do kind of layers of abstraction and so forth. But yeah, sorry, go ahead, Justin.
No, that was great. So I got another question. This is I think this is something that people think about a lot. These job posts that ask you to be able to do everything under the sun.
Those are written by ChatGPT.
They're written now. They are, but they used to be written by recruiters who didn't understand the tech stack, or HR who didn't understand the tech stack. They are not looking for this person. They're looking for something that's not that.
You have to read between the lines. You have to read between the lines. And honestly, I'm usually more interested in the organization and what the organization does. So if I were to apply at NML, I would have a good idea of what I would probably be doing. As opposed to just actually reading a job. I don't know. One of my students, Dean, who I mentioned earlier, he accidentally applied for a senior position at SnapScan. And they kind of were like, who the hell is this guy? He was still a student. He hasn't worked a single day in his life. And he accidentally applied for a design lead position or something. But then they messaged him and they're like, okay, clearly you're not qualified for this. But are you perhaps interested in an internship? Because we're kind of looking, we like your portfolio. And the same thing, actually, my very first job that I got as well was similar situation. I was applying for something, and then they were like, yeah, you're not a good fit for this, but hey, do you want to do some holiday work? So yeah, also, yeah, I don't know, I don't know. I pay very little, and to me, if you see a lot of different things, it's either it's not written by tech teams themselves, or it's just they are just seeing, it's kind of an ideal. And I think the other thing is as well, there's a bit of an arms race here, because you're getting so many applications that you kind of push the requirements so high, just at the very least to scare off the people who are kind of have experience as a bartender. And that's not a made-up story. I had a bartender apply for a position once. I don't know. I don't know how to what to do about that. But don't trust what you see in job descriptions. I don't really know how to solve that problem.
It's, I mean, as we said before, hiring is super broken. So
yes, that's also the thing. And it also, I don't know. It's what I also tend to find is that the bigger organizations tend to have better descriptions. So if you're applying for a job, at let's say Capitec, or you're applying for a job at Takealot or whatever, they tend to be a bit more, because they know people are going to laugh at them if they're and it's going to kind of diminish your reputation, your perception of, for example, the Takealot engineering team. If I'm look at these clowns, what the hell is this? This is a tech team. This isn't a single developer. They want an entire tech team in one person.
And that will be shared everywhere as well.
Yes,
That's the
people
thing.
do clown on that quite a bit. Like I have
Yeah.
to say as well, people do share these on LinkedIn every now and then. Where if someone posts one of those, I literally want you to be able to do everything jobs
Yeah.
for an intern
One,
salary. Yeah.
yeah. Got another thing here. What do you do when you pass the intro interview, tech assessment, and culture fit, but then the hiring process goes quiet? Feels like all that time was wasted. Yeah. If that does happen, it's probably a blessing in disguise, because an organization like that is putting you through all that and then kind of ghosting you is not a
Yes.
place you want to
I,
work.
I,
Yeah.
I would say that you are entitled to, like, at the very least, if you've made it that far, you are 100% entitled to having some type of a breakdown of where you can improve.
Yeah. You follow up with
If
them and ask them
Yeah.
why. Yeah.
But no,
And
okay, but it's also important. Don't do that in an accusatory way. Like, don't be like,
yeah.
why did I not get this job? I'm the perfect candidate. And like, also, that shouldn't be your goal. But I think, like, obviously, if you've made it that far, they probably have a sense of, like, kind of who you are. There was probably some interest there, and they can probably give you some really good advice in terms of where you can improve. And I would try and, like, if that is what you get out of it, I think if you've gone through all of that and you get some solid feedback out of it, to me that's a good deal. Yeah.
Yes.
But then there are other
But
companies who would just ghost you, and, like,
yeah.
also, like, it's bullet dodged. Yeah.
Something else that's, a terrible, terrible practice, and I don't know how much it happens here, but it happens a lot in the States, is that companies post like 100 jobs and none of them are actually real, just so they can get their valuations up. And
Yes.
it's an
Yeah.
absolutely appalling practice, but it
Yes.
happens a lot in the tech industry.
Yes.
So
Well, what people also do is they may be thinking of opening a position, but they just want to see what's out there and whatever.
test the waters. Yeah.
Yeah, and they want to see kind of what's the going rate nowadays for a developer. And I think that's also why it's tough, man. Like, you also need to expect them to be reasonable. And I think another thing as well is the reason why I've had a lot of arguments with people about take-home work. But if you can't pay for take-home work, if you want people to do take-home, you're giving them take-home work way too easily. If I give someone take-home work, then I'm pretty much at the point of being ready to pull the trigger. But people just do that because they don't want to do hiring properly, and they want to have you do all the work. And, like, if you do any take-home work, like, you are entitled to feedback on that. What if you didn't get the job? Where can you improve? I would always push for that, and I think it would actually leave a pretty good impression on me as someone who's hiring.
Yes,
If someone comes back
I would,
and be like,
yeah.
"Hey, where can I maybe ask you for, like, where can I improve? What are some areas that you felt I was lacking in? And, like, I appreciate your time and whatever." And that's gold, man. If you can get feedback from someone who's currently hiring for a position that you're interested in, and they can highlight for you where you can improve that if you were to apply again, like that's great stuff. And I'm also a firm believer in go to interviews, man. Like apply for jobs that you don't really even think you're going to take.
Yes.
Like, because, like, I
Don't
think it's
be don't be put off by a list of 9 things and you only match 4.
yeah.
Because chances are no one's going to match all 9 of those things.
Yes, and the only way, and this is why I maybe ask the question, like, how do you get better at interviews? And I think this is good advice, regardless. Like I've told my wife to do this as well, and she's in pharmacology. Is just go for interviews every now and then. Like, even if you're not actively looking for a job, apply for something, see how it pans out, go for an interview, chat to them, because then you get a good feel of what are people out there looking for. How do you match up? Like, and if you get the job and you're like, shit, I actually wasn't even interested in accepting this job. Like, you can literally just say, sorry, unfortunately, I can't take this. Something else came
You're
up,
not bound.
and
Yeah,
that's it.
you're not
You
bound
don't need
to
to
do
explain yourself.
anything. Yeah. In
Yeah.
as much as the company is not required to hire you, you aren't required to work there.
Yeah, you can literally just say, yeah, unfortunately, I can't take this anymore, period. And you'd sometimes be surprised. Like, when I worked at Runway, sorry, as I said, it's been a long week, guys. When I worked at Runway, I went to the interview and I told them, like, I'm not, no, sorry, it was through a recruiter back before recruiters had a bad reputation. It was like 2014 or something, 2014, yeah. And like, it was through, and I told the recruiter, I'm keen to go, but I'm not going to take this job, but I'm keen to go and chat with them. And the recruiter was like, yeah, dude, like, just go. And I ended up taking the job. I was so impressed by kind of like the people and like the head of tech, and like, I was, this is such a cool guy. Like, I don't even want to do, like, this is not like, I don't want to go into e-commerce, but this is such a cool team. And I was like, I think I'm going to take this job, man. So you surprise yourself, and I think it's just good in terms of, because it's one of those things where, like, if you are very like jittery or kind of don't do well with interviews, like, the only way to get better is to just normalize it, just get used to it, because it's very formulaic. They always ask the same questions, the same. There's the same similar structure and whatever. And the more you just put yourself through it, the more you're just like, here we go again. All right, cool, yeah, So public speaking almost.
All right.
Yeah, we need to end.
Very good.
Sorry, I spoke way more. I went into this
No, don't worry. It was
with
good.
resolution that I'm going to speak less. And
no, it's great Schalk. I'm sure everyone enjoyed the conversation. So. So thanks everyone who joined us and for leaving the great questions, Matisa and Fabian, and cooking channel without a name. I love that. That's so good. Sean, etc. I can't name everyone, unfortunately. I put a bunch of links in the chat, and I've also put them in the Frontend Meetup channel on Discord. And one thing I have included there is a little while ago we did when we were still Zapped, ZAPD, before we amalgamated everything, we did a whole series on finding your first design job. So I've linked to that playlist here in the chat, and I've also put it on the Discord. There's some great stuff there, including some portfolio case study reviews that we went over with people who brought them in, and I would say just have a look at that series. I think it's really, really helpful.
Yes. I think there's a lot of those where we just spoke to people who just got their first job.
Yes,
and kind of did a bit of a review of kind of how it went and so forth. I think actually Dean, that I've mentioned a couple of times as well, was
part of that.
Well. Yes. Like, about this whole story that I just told about the snap scan.
So that's a great series to have a look at, I think. And just to reiterate, if you're not on the Discord, join the Discord, and we're always there if you want, post questions. People are very friendly. We're happy to help and send good reading material or whatever it might be. That's the whole point of FEDSA.
I have a lot of problems. One of those problems is not someone asked for like something, they want advice about something again. Oh man, I don't have time for this. I'm like, okay, cool, cancel all my meetings. Like, it's like, if it isn't clear, like, I'm super passionate about this, and like, I think because I myself had such a rough journey, and I sometimes wish there were more key players in terms of guiding me in my early days. That's something I'm really passionate about, and I really hope that I can help some people who are kind of just feeling overwhelmed and not knowing where to start and so forth. All right.
Please feel free to reach out to Schalk or myself or Liesel, whoever, and we'll do our best to guide people in whatever way we can. So thanks everyone. Thanks, Schalk. It's always a pleasure to have these conversations with you. So I always really, really enjoy them.
Cool. Thanks everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.